those are things that I think that you as the viewers, you should arm yourself about because they affect you on a daily basis.
Real life. If it ain't real life, it ain't real life. Just ain't real life street Starz. You know what time it is.
What about the bounty hunters?
What about them?
Like, should the prisoners be worried about bounty hunters?
Dog.
The hell yes.
So they're out there and
They talk about a bounty hunter. They get paid to find you.
So watch this. What a lot of people don't realize is if any of those guys had not been convicted and were out on bond, if they're bounty hunters and they were on substantial bonds, if that person brings them in, you know, that could very well benefit the bonding company. The bonding company can say, hey, look, we were responsible. He did this, but we went and we got him back. We retrieved him. And so you don't penalize us. That's why that 10% rule comes in, right? Anybody who's ever been arrested, you always hear about the 10%. Well, the bond is you pay 10%, but the bonding company's still on the hook for the actual amount.
Exactly.
And so they got to come off that money.
You got to collect.
Or the insurance has to pay that money. If you are not detained, if you're not in jail, and it's because of your client's own doing, then they're on the hook for that. And so if they bring you back, that could save the bonding company having to pay that fee to the courts.
Correct. Yeah, bond is just an insurance in general. If you were representing one of the escapees and they called you and said, Larry, I ain't going back, but I'm at my mama's house. Are you the attorney?
The number you've dialed.
The attorney-client privilege. Do you have to, like, by law tell, like, hey, he just called me saying he's here. I gotta let y'all know, or is it the attorney-client privilege still is in place if he calls you and say,
Joking.
I'm just curious.
Joking, you can finish it, but I'm not answering.
Damn. Okay, all right, there you go. That should let you know.
You can finish that question, but I'm not answering.
That should let you know. Before we get out of here.
You know what? Let me do this for you.
Oh, please.
Let me do this for you. The law is basically that as a professional, if you know about the whereabouts or an act of someone who has caused or could cause harm to someone else, you have an obligation to provide that information to prevent such harm from happening. I will say that because, you know, every lawyer, there's that whole thing with psychiatrists and doctors. If you know of someone who is suicidal or who is depressed and they've said that they're going to cause harm to someone, you have that doctor-client privilege. However, there is that gray area in which to prevent harm, you're able to say something.
But it's that gray area.
But asking me that question and what I'm going to do,
okay, yeah.
I'm just going to tell you what the law says. I'm not saying what I'm doing.
Yeah, because a person who commits a mass murder and then confesses to their lawyer saying, I did that.
Man, look.
But I need to get off.
Like,
I don't see the lawyer saying, okay, let me go turn you in. He said he did it. It's your job to basically still fight that case.
Man, the problem with confessions to lawyers is a professional question. So this is now becoming a CLE for lawyers. As a lawyer, you can't present evidence that you know is false.
I didn't know that. That's good to know. I didn't know that. I thought some lawyers just, even though they know they'll.
No, man, you can't do that.
I see.
You can't do that. And one of the things I always tell people is, and I tell young lawyers, always wear the white hat. And it's never failed me. Because number one, if I'm representing you and I walk into a courtroom, the judge either knows firsthand or knows from asking about me that I am always on above board. I'm not doing any shenanigans. I'm not doing anything. I'm litigating the case. And I'm going to litigate it right, and I'm going to litigate it to the max.
Correct.
right? Like
Moral code out of it, or
the what?
your morals out of it, strictly by the law.
I mean, what does my morals have to do with me representing you?
Sometimes you might feel he's guilty.
I might not like your fade.
Damn.
Right?
That's south side to do it. That's south side to do it.
Right? I might not like anything. I might not like your cologne, but, and I said it before on your show, to me, it's always about the Constitution. Because the moment that we start treading on the First, the Second, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth Amendment, then the hell with the 13th. And if the 13th is gone, everybody in this room is subject to have shackles and end up on a boat somewhere. And so I protect every part of the Constitution as a lawyer because I took a sworn oath to do so. I'm not doing it because I'm a sellout. I'm not doing it because I'm just, I'm doing it because I understand that if I litigate and I act upon this document and I use it correctly, then I can do things to help my people. I mean, when George Floyd happened, it was me and 5 other lawyers across this country who were advising your representatives, your senators, on how to negotiate to try to get this bill passed throughout the country, right? And so how do you do that when you will overlook other parts of the Constitution that you feel might not fit you well? Like I heard a lawyer said that Puffy shouldn't have an AR. Well, hell, we live in Texas and we hog hunt, we hunt, right? And so to sit up there and say and tell national television that no one should have an AR, I get the political stance on that with school shootings and other things. I get that. But at the same time, the Second Amendment and the laws of the states allow us to purchase those weapons, those type of weapons. And so to sit up there and tread on that for a personal belief, right? Because if you're going to talk about people shouldn't have AR-15s, then I need that same energy for police shootings. I need that same energy for underrepresented, underfunded schools in poor urban communities. I need that same energy for everything that is quote unquote morally wrong. So let's stick to the Constitution, let's stick to the argument, and let's stick to the issue at hand, and let's go at it.
Does the Constitution need any updates? And if there is, can you give us one?
Man, that's a whole nother story.
Okay.
Let's and look, watch this. Those of you who are watching this, you heard the question. If you want to hear about, some things that could be tweaked in the Constitution, some things that could be tweaked within this country as far as dealing with the laws, like Puerto Rico. Should Puerto Rico have voting rights? Should Washington, D.C. have voting rights?
Right.
Is it fair that it's more people in Washington, D.C. who have no voting rights as to the president when places, then they have more people there than they have in South Dakota? And so there are lots of things that we could talk about, man, but that's all. Y'all always do this toward the end. We open up Pandora's box. Yeah, you open up, and so we'll talk about that because I think that even though it's not as sexy as baby oil, 2 dudes, and a woman on stilts, right, hanging from a rafter. I know it's not as sexy as that. It's not as sexy as baby oil gunfights.
Man,
I know it's not as sexy as that, but those are things that I think that you as the viewers, you should arm yourself about because they affect you on a daily basis. And we'll talk about the bills that just recently passed.
Yeah, no food stamps, SNAP, Trump. Yeah, we're gonna bring you back for that one because that's the whole conversation.
It's lots of things that involve the law, the Constitution, and this country that isn't sexy. But
Canada becoming a 51st state. I'm excited.
But watch this. Are you more excited about hearing about Miss Ventura and Puff Daddy's sexual interaction when in a couple of months or next year, in 2026, you might not have food for your kids?
Come on. Yeah, no, that's not sexy enough. But that's reality.
Or you might have to work 80 hours a month.
That's a reality.
When you've been watching Murray and talk shows from 10 to 5 for the last 10 years.
That's a reality.
So, I like talking about those hard-hitting things.
As we let you out, my last I want to get your take on it just because it happened was people choosing to be executed by death by gunfire, firing squad.
We talked about that on my podcast.
Oh yeah. Just real quick, just what is I guess it's a moral question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? It's a choice of the inmate, but what are your thoughts on more inmates taking that choice to go out and the way of that?
Go to Taylor Made Conversations on YouTube, the sister channel to the RealLyfe Street Stars, where we have a different type of talk show, but I think you will enjoy it. But at the same time, man, we are crazy.
I like it.
We are.
Throw your hands up.
Look, man, you are going back to hangings and firing squad. I talked about it. I think it was in South Carolina is where they're doing the firing squad.
Yeah.
And the first one they did okay. And basically it's set up where it's 3 individuals who have rifles and they're about 10 to 15 feet away.
Aiming at the heart.
And they're supposed to be aiming at the heart, and they have targets around the heart where they need to be shooting. And the idea is that you shoot, and as the bullets cut through the body, they cut off the circulation throughout the body, so you instantly die, right? Because there's no more blood flow, there's no more anything that is providing those sensories to the brain, and so you don't feel pain. Well, this last one,
he's on the ground.
One out of 3 hit the mark. And so this person was alleged to have laid on the ground a little more than a minute suffering from these gunshot wounds. And I think a large part of it is someone potentially saying, if I gotta die, you see it all the time. If I gotta die, I'm going out.
Live by the sword, die by the sword.
I'm going out like a blade, I'm going out with a blaze of glory. You gonna have to.
Yeah, you gonna live.
Right.
You know
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You ain't gonna give me no drugs and put me out like no junkie. You're gonna have to, I'm going out like a soldier. Okay, like a soldier. Man. There's a lot of soldiers who went out who wish they didn't go out like that, wish they stayed at home. Yeah. And so I think I can't really explain to the mindset, but I think that as a country, we should never have allowed something like that.
Yeah, the conversation of death penalty is, again, that's a whole nother conversation. And that goes into people's religious standpoints, people's morals, the code, and things of that nature as far as the giver and the person receiving the death. So thank you for at least just directing them to the conversation at Taylor Made Conversations to kind of go more in depth on your thoughts on that. With that being said, for those that do want to follow you, do want to kind of catch up with your take on this trial, your take on other conversations that you've been having, some of the guests that you've been having on your show, again, pretty profound. Can you tell them how to get at everything that you're doing on your end?
You can find me at the RealLyfe Lawyer on everything. And then Taylor Made Conversations is the YouTube channel. And then you can find me at tailormadelaw.com if you are looking for potential legal services or you need a referral and you want to find a good lawyer, right? If you want to find a good lawyer and you live in Chicago, you want to find a good lawyer and you live in Ohio, one of the things that I've had the privilege to do is travel this country and work with some of the best lawyers in the country. And so one of the things that if I ever suggest a lawyer for you, is not going to be someone who's going to take your money, who's not going to return your call. It's not someone who is not going to actually give you an understanding of your legal situation. And it's not anyone who is not afraid to go to trial. And so I always tell clients, trial is totally up to you. Even though it's sometimes I feel like we should go to trial. And I had, when I did criminal, and there's some people who didn't want to go. And even with sometimes with cases dealing with money. Personal injury cases. There's $1 million on the table. The client wants to take the $1 million. I think the case is worth at least 2.5 or 3 million. And they don't want to take the risk of going to trial. That is totally up to the client. I don't decide that for you. And so one of the things that I do is I help people find great lawyers.
With that being said, definitely they got to tap in with you. They haven't tapped in. And again, as we speak on this Diddy trial and we're going forward, we're going to make sure we have you back in to speak on more. If y'all have y'all questions, again, throw them to RealLyfe. Jump in the comments. Are you responding to the comments?
I am responding to the comments.
I would say, quit all that hating in the comments too. My boy is thorough with
Come
it.
on, man.
He ain't taking no sides, man. He just real thorough, man.
Come on, man.
It's the law, man.
It's the law.
The real life law.
The real life law. And you know what, man? I take the comments good or bad. Some of them are pretty funny. I've come at and I've told them. I said, man, that's a good one. You got me on that
Chuckled.
one. I'll make sure I don't wear that again. Or I might not do certain things again. And then the ones who come at me with misstating Miss Ventura's name, perfectly understandable.
Yeah.
Perfectly understandable. But the ones who come at me saying that I take a side or I'm misogynistic, if you watch my earlier interviews here with the RealLyfe Street Stars, you'll see I am far from that. I am very far from that. But I do call balls and strikes as they are. And so I'm sorry if sometimes I'm not saying what you want me to say. But what's the first word of the show? Real.
Real. Come on. There you go.
And we're just gonna keep it real.
There you go. With that being said, we got to thank you again, Larry Taylor III, from the Johnny Cochran Law Firm, man, the RealLyfe lawyer.
Hold on, I got to correct you.
Please.
Larry Taylor Jr.
Larry Taylor Jr. Man, you don't put the third on your thing?
My son is the third.
Ah, well, shout out your son.
I know people say I look young enough to be my own daddy.
Come on.
But
well, there you go, man. We got to say it, man. We appreciate you, man. The RealLyfe lawyer back on the couch, man. We're going to tap back in. But again, thank you for this very educational experience right now, man. We got to say it. RealLyfe lawyer, Larry Taylor, you are a RealLyfe street star. There you go. Hey.
Shout out RealLyfe Street Stars, nigga. Move. Hey. Shout out RealLyfe Street Stars, nigga. Move. Hey.